welcome to today's Thrive Programme podcast. Today I'm joined by Shannon Sullivan, who is one of our coaches based over in Essex. And Shannon is here to talk about the cold, dark winter months. Do you want to introduce why you think this is relevant at the moment, Shannon?
Yeah, of course. So we are currently in October filming this. So something we thought would be quite fitting as we are going into winter now. It's starting to get a bit colder. It's been pretty rainy recently. And something that comes up over and over with my clients is about how the cold, dark, wintry months can make them feel down and depressed. So most of them, when starting the program, will either agree or strongly agree with that statement. And that is pretty common, throughout most people you'll talk to. I think, especially us living in the UK, we have a long winter, we're coming into it now, and it probably won't get warm again until end of April, maybe, May time. So that's quite a long time. That if you're saying that these wintry months make you feel down and depressed, we're talking about like half the year at that point. And do we want to spend half of the year feeling down and depressed when actually we can't change the weather? We're choosing to live in the UK, unless we want to go and move to the Caribbean or something, that would be lovely if that was an option, but it is not for most of us. So, while this is the weather, it's not going to particularly change. It's going to get cold and darker every single year. There's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is change our reaction to it. That's the only thing that we can control in this situation. So I think just by having that, belief in that statement that's just in our head that, oh no, like the days are getting shorter, we're losing that light. I'm waking up and it's dark, and it's rained for a week. And I think Brits especially love to just talk about the weather constantly, and mainly how bad it is. And if we keep going over that constantly, then of course we're going to feel quite down about it. But in this episode, I wanted to talk about ways that I start to think about it differently, and my sort of tips of things that I've introduced into my life to keep me feeling positive throughout winter, because as we've said, it is, pretty much half the year here. So, I don't want to waste that half of the year thinking, oh, I've just got to get through it until it, becomes spring and summer again. So, yeah, I thought I would just take you through my sort of tips, ways that I deal better with it now, because it was something that I, fed into as well before I completed the program. I was definitely susceptible to different like marketing and people talking about it. The sort of idea that January is the worst month of the year and Blue Monday and things like that. I really believed that, if someone, online has told me this is a really depressing day, then it's going to be a bad day, before completing the program. That was my belief as well. So I have had to actively change things and start to see things differently.
Nice.
So some of my tips would be to focus on events and things that are coming up. So, as we said, it's probably about half the year. So there's lots of things that go on in winter. We've got Halloween coming up next week, which can be fun, depending on, if you like that kind of thing. I love dressing my house up, pumpkins outside. I haven't got kids yet, but I know it's like really fun for the kids to go around, dress up. I like buying lots of sweets for the kids to have. I like baking things, seasonal things around Halloween, pumpkin pie, and things like that, or other seasonal bakes. I've done loads with apples recently because we've got some apple trees in our garden, and my grandparents have got even more. I've made enough crumbles to last us the whole winter. They're in the freezer right now, so that's a really nice like treat that I know, I've made, and I can get them out whenever we fancy that. And then you've obviously got fireworks night, if that's something you enjoy going to. There's normally lots of events surrounding that. The big one is obviously Christmas. So, there's a lot of build up to that. There's so many different things you can get involved in. There's, fetes and fairs, markets. One of my favourite things to do in the wintry months of a weekend is go to a garden centre, and they normally have all the sort of Christmassy decorations. There's one local to us who have a German Christmas market, like in the garden centre, and they start it in September, so you've got plenty of time to go to it. I've already been 3 times and will probably go more before Christmas. But all of these little things that you can choose to do in these wintry months to get excited and focus on something more positive. Then obviously you've got January, when these events start to fade away a little bit, which is why I think, people class it as the most depressing month, apparently. Because, we've had all this lead up till Christmas, this, hype, and then we got to go back to work in January or school and things like that. But it's how to turn that on its head and look at it as, it's obviously a start of a new year, it's a fresh start. Could we, start a new hobby or activity? It's my sister's birthday in January, things like that still go on. We make that as exciting as possible for her. Obviously, a January birthday, not always ideal so close to Christmas, but, we try and make a fuss of that as much as possible. And, we all tend to look forward so much to things in summer, like our summer holidays, but is there something you could do in winter instead? A night or two away somewhere, even in the UK, like I love to do that and be sat in a pub by the open fire, the things you can't do in summer. In summer we go to the pub garden, but in winter I think it's equally lovely to go sit by the fire, have a roast, have a nice pie and mash, whatever it is. So it's looking for those moments in winter that you can't get in the other seasons. Another one of my tips that's really worked for me is still getting out as much as possible. So, I think we probably all lack vitamin D in winter, in the UK, I'd say, especially. But even getting out, in our lunch breaks, maybe, in the middle of the day when there is a bit of light, it might still be cloudy outside, but those rays still get through the clouds. It, will improve your mood, moving, going out for walks. It helps everything. It helps your sleep, not only your mental state, it's just better for you. And, on those walks, it's focusing on anything positive you can. I mean, my family do make fun of me sometimes because I'll send them pictures of like the different coloured leaves, or if there's like a really pretty sunset, I will always go out and take a picture of that. So you have to actively look for these things, because you might walk down the road and it might be quite dreary if you are looking out for that. But at the same time, you could walk down and you look at all of the acorns that are falling, and you have to want to look out for these things, the positive things, and there will be some if you look for them. Other things I like to do would be to reach out to other people who, maybe feel the same. You might have friends that say these wintry months get them really down. It might be worth reaching out to them and maybe doing something together. It might be, a new hobby or activity. I'm actually this evening for the first time trying a painting class, which I've never done before. I wouldn't say I can paint particularly, but I saw it advertised locally and I thought, why not? That sounds like a fun activity. Invited a friend with me, and we'll see how it goes. But I think trying new things as much as possible, something that's memorable, so that when you look back over the winter, you can actually pick out a few things and say, oh, well, I did this and I tried this, and it makes things stick out rather than, having the same work week over and over, just doing the same things at the weekend. If, every few weeks you can try something new, it doesn't need to be, anything expensive or difficult. It could be a Pilates class, or, trying a new nail salon, or, whatever it is that actually in a couple of weeks you'll remember, oh, I did that and that was nice, and just something a bit different that can make, just things stick out to you a bit more, and, will be something to look back on. And actually, again, instead of in summer, oh, we had this amazing, summer holiday and that's what I'm going to look back on, we want to still be creating those moments in winter as
Mm.
well.
Or at least we can recognize that it's not the weather, the summer
Mm,
versus winter, that makes us feel the way we do, but
yeah.
our thinking. So even you could flip it around and think, well, it's not necessarily the sunshine then that makes us have a good mood in the
Mm,
summer.
yeah.
It's, as you say, it's because we've got, I don't know, nice summer holiday to look forward to. And of course, a
Mm,
lot of our thinking in the run up to a holiday is all excited and looking
yeah.
forward to the mojito by the pool and getting a tan or going swimming or trying new stuff. But it's not
Yeah.
the thing that makes us feel good, but our
Mm,
thinking. So, what you're
yeah.
saying here is we can do the same thinking
Mm,
irrelevant of the weather. There's still things we can find that are
mm,
nice to focus on, or that make us feel good, or that we can look forward to. So the
yeah.
key comes back to how we're thinking, because
Yeah.
that's what drives how we feel.
Exactly. And that's it. And if we do keep telling ourselves that, winter is going to be just dark and depressing, then that is how we'll feel about it, because we're thinking that way. And I do have a lot of people come to me, clients and just people I know as well, who, maybe work outside, and they say, well, I just can't think about this differently. It is just depressing. I get wet outside, it's cold, you're not going to change my mind that, winter is horrible. And I'm like, that's fair enough. I'm not going to say that, I would enjoy that particularly either. But can we find moments in any of this to change things, to make things more positive for you in those months? That can be, is it coming home at the end of the day, having a bath instead of a shower, or, having a big mug of hot chocolate, whatever we can find in, these days to sort of find those little pockets of enjoyment. We seem to search for them in summer, and it's, just almost part of culture, I find. I don't know if that is just British culture, but it does, I see it replicated in so many different people, that, we find those moments in other seasons, but if we do look for them, we will find them in winter as well. So I'm not saying to anyone, I don't particularly enjoy when I wake up in the morning and it's dark. That isn't always the most fun thing, but that doesn't mean I'm going to wake up and think, oh, today's going to be awful because I'm waking up and it's dark. It just is dark. I just have to accept that, and, try and move on and be as positive as I can throughout the rest of the day, and find things in that day I will enjoy instead, whether that's, I love winter fashion. I enjoy getting my coats out again, my boots, things like that, So I choose to look at those things instead of focusing on, you know, this is just going to be horrible for the next 6 months. Because equally, we could say things in summer, there's positives and negatives in anything. If you look for the negatives, you know, we have people here in summer who say it was just too hot. I, can't deal with this heat, and complain about it that way round as well. But in that circumstance, again, we need to look for the positives there. So whatever the situation, that is exactly what we're talking about. It is our thinking. We have to stop focusing on the things that we can't control. We're never going to be able to control the weather where we live, unfortunately. So all we can control is how we react, how we, deal with these different situations, and can choose to find positives as much as possible.
Yeah. What do you think the medicalization of things like depression in the winter, how do you think those have an effect on the way that a lot of us learn to think and understand these things to be?
Yeah, so you've obviously got like SAD, seasonal affective disorder, things like that, where people do say that, I think it's like the lack of light and stuff is particularly affecting them, and it can be medically diagnosed that you have that. And if you have been told by a doctor that you have this, it can just almost be like an acceptance of, oh well, then I'm just going to be down and depressed, as soon as it gets dark. But you do still have a choice in those months. It might be that you do need some more light, and as we talked about, getting out as much as possible will be, beneficial, definitely. But it's still how we create and choose these situations. So much of it will be based on um, how we choose to react to any given situation. And it's the same with what we talked about marketing. If you are told that a particular day in January, Blue Monday, is the most depressing day of the year, then, most people are going to feel quite down that day. If that message is pretty in your face, especially on social media, Blue Monday is coming up, the most depressing day of the year. In fact, that's mainly just marketing companies trying to get you to book a holiday with them. That is how things like that have been created. So we have to be, I think, aware, really conscious of the fact that we are really surrounded by this negative language a lot, and just being told that, oh well, you have this, medical condition related to the weather change, or we've got a day coming up that's known to be the most depressing day of the year. If you weren't told those things, would it still affect you, or would you have just had a standard Monday? And actually, can we purposely turn it on its head? Okay, they're telling me that this is going to be the most depressing day of the year. How can I make it into a really good day instead? Can I make my favorite dinner that night, or book in to do something nice, go to the cinema, or do something I know I'm really going to enjoy instead? And actually just say no, like, just because someone is telling me, that I'm going to feel this way, I don't have to. It's always my choice how I react to these situations.
Yeah, which is valid to say, isn't it? When you understand that, well, when you feel powerful, when you know
Yeah.
that you are the creator of the way that you think and therefore the way that you feel. But the
Yeah.
old you and the old me and the old many of us, like, I think,
Mm.
we learn to, or we get taught to have a fairly external understanding to what makes us feel the way we do. The
Yeah.
way that we learn in school, or the way that a lot of people will speak around, well, exams are stressful, or you made me cross. My mum used to
Mm.
say, you made my blood boil. Right? If I'd have known this in school, I'd have said, no, I didn't, that was you. But obviously you didn't know that. But so much of the language and the way that we understand stuff is that there are
Mm.
external factors and forces that determine how we think and feel. And so, having somebody say, gosh, that, your depression is caused by a lack of sunlight in the winter months, and these are the things that you need to go and do, it makes sense. It's logical, it's understandable, but it's not the only way of understanding the way that you're feeling. When you're feeling powerful, when you've learned to take that responsibility for how you think and feel, it's much easier then, isn't it, to go, right, what can I do on Blue Monday to make it a better day? What can I do to almost stick two fingers up at that? People trying to tell me this is how I'm supposed to feel today, and actually go, well, it's up to me how I feel. It's a Monday. So how do I want to spend my Monday today, irrelevant of the date on the calendar?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the program gave me, not just with this, with pretty much everything in my life. It's that, I say, it's the perspective as well, is sometimes just taking that step back, looking at the bigger picture. Like, do I need to be worried about this, to be down about this, to be anxious? Is it helpful to feel those ways? Or, actually, am I just making things more difficult for myself by feeling that way? Because, it had never really occurred to me that I, wasn't affecting the outcome by stressing, so long in advance about events or things that were coming up. In actual fact, I probably made them worse, by doing all of those things. And then, that realization of, oh, actually, I can change all of this, I can have that perspective, realize that, I can be positive about it, and that's going to have the positive impact. It's everything that goes into it, the feeling more powerful, the realizing that you have the control over these situations, and even when you don't have control, being able to cope with the outcome and knowing that, all you really then do have control of is your reactions to things. They all then feed into, again, feeling more powerful. It's all just instead of what I was in, a sort of vicious cycle, it's then a positive cycle, which is what you want, really. So, this in particular is something I work on with my clients, this, about the wintry months. But I think just through going through the program and, everything we work on, thinking styles, self-esteem, everything that makes them feel more powerful at the end, all of these beliefs that they're starting with, they find have, quite naturally improved, and they've changed their mind on, which is really lovely to see. So, you can obviously actively work on these things, and we do often pick off a few that, they are particularly external on, that we work through. But it is great to see that by the end, naturally, so many of these beliefs have changed to being more powerful and internal just through doing the work that they're doing.
Yeah, it's putting those more powerful specs on, isn't it? And starting to act and think and behave in a more powerful way, which is where you give yourself the responsibility. You hold yourself accountable for how you're thinking and how you're feeling and how you're behaving, how you're responding, whatever day, whatever season. And then the weather becomes less of a determining factor. And the determining factor becomes more, well, how am I thinking about the weather, or how am I thinking about my day, or what am I choosing to do today, or what can I choose to do differently tomorrow?
Yeah,
Gives you more agency, doesn't it? More power, more control, more responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So what would be your top tips, your words of wisdom, if this is something that people are listening to and thinking, gosh, I can feel a bit down, or equally, I love the summer because it makes me happy.
I think the most important thing to take is that it's not happening to you. The weather will change, and it's deciding that if currently, your belief is that the cold, wintry months do make you feel down and depressed, it's questioning in yourself, are they making you feel that way? Or do you actually have a choice here in how you're feeling? And then, everything we've talked about, all of these tips, you know, everything we can bring in to find these positive moments, these things to look forward to, will hopefully start to change things for you. You know, if you look for the nice positive things to happen, then you will start to feel happier and more positive throughout these months.
Yeah, I think the key is questioning what you think you know,
Yeah.
isn't it? Whether it's you think what you think about the weather, or what you think about exams making you stressed, or what you think
Mm,
about your incapability to do driving without feeling panicky.
mm,
That's a way of thinking, isn't it? And getting used to thinking, well, is that helping me, or is there another way? What would
yeah.
somebody else think? How do
Yeah.
other people do it? How do people who, like your sister, maybe likes January?
Yeah.
My boy is born in January, so for us, we're straight after Christmas. We're straight into birthday planning, and it's
Yeah.
lovely having that straight after Christmas. So
Mm,
it's not the weather makes everybody down and
yeah.
depressed. So how am I doing the winter differently to somebody else who doesn't have the same feelings in winter?
Mm,
If I look at
yeah.
somebody who feels all right about winter and actually looks forward to having a fire and having a hot chocolate and going to garden centres, what if I start to try, do things more like that?
Yeah.
Could I make myself feel different?
Mm, yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Very good, very good. Well, lovely to have you on. If
Thank you
people have
for
got
having me.
questions, can they reach out to you and ask questions and
Of course, yeah.
get your
Yeah,
thoughts?
definitely. Yeah, I love that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. We will talk again soon, no doubt.
Thank you.